Everyone, welcome to live class. Well, the video to makeup live class for Tuesday, December 1st. Remember, we do have live class every Tuesday and Wednesday, so make sure you mark that and make an alarm in your iPad so that you're there so you don't have to watch these videos. But today we're talking about A Map into the World by Kao Kalia Yang, and this is our live lesson makeup. So the goal for today is I can write what a neighbor means to me using complete sentences. So we're going to do a greeting and check-in. We're going to read the book, A Map into the World. We're going to talk about the book by doing a book talk. We'll then learn a little bit about complete sentences, and then I'll talk about your assignment, and you guys will have time to work. So for our greeting today, I want to know, what does the word neighbor mean? You can either share like what the word literally means or an example that you might have of when a neighbor, what it meant to be neighborly to you. So if you have an answer to this question, which you should, please send me an email with your answer so I know that you watched the video and I know that can hear what you have to say, because what you have to say is important. So for me, what neighbor means, like the word neighbor is the people that live around you. But when I think about neighbors, I think about um, my the next door neighbors. Like my best friend lives next door. When I was a kid, we used to play together all the time. They're whenever I go and see them, even today, like our neighbor brought over a pie this weekend. So just doing things for each other, getting people to talk, having people to talk to, and that's what being a neighbor means to me. So I want to hear what you have to say. Send me an email with your answer. So we're going to read A Map into the World by Kao Kalia Yang. This is our second time reading this book, so because we read it yesterday, or you should have. If you didn't, go back and do that. It's really quick. As we read, I want you to see if there's any new details you can find. I want you to think about the main character, Patao, and her neighbor Bob, and try to figure out what Patao did for Bob. So let's read. So here's the cover, A Map into the World by Kao Kalia Yang, illustrated by Seo Kim. The title page. The first time we saw the swing and the slide, the garden of the greenhouse with the big windows, my mother sat down in a chair in the backyard and said she did not want to get up. Tai Tai and I looked at the garden, and she pointed out tomatoes, green beans, and a watermelon, round as my mother's belly. Tai Tai knelt down to touch the dirt. I asked my mother if I could try the swing. She said, "Yes, Pantao." The greenhouse became our house. I helped Tai Tai hang the special story cloth about how the Hmong got to America on the empty wall by the big window of the living room. We saw an old man and woman through the window. They waved. We waved back. Later, my mother and father brought me across the street. The old man's name was Bob, and the old woman's name was Ruth. Up close, I could see that they were even older than Tai Tai. Tai Tai and I were in the garden picking tomatoes and beans and checking on the watermelon when my parents brought my baby brothers home from the hospital. I ran to the gate. The boys were smaller than my baby dolls, but cuter than any doll, with their fuzzy heads and red lips and round brown eyes. Some days the babies cried very loud. I covered my ears with my hands and asked my father to take me outside. Bob and Ruth sat on their special bench. We waved back and forth. The leaves of the two ginkgo trees by Bob and Ruth's house turned yellow like apricots. One day, a brisk wind blew and the fan-shaped leaves came flying down. They covered the grass in the street and the dark mouth of the drain. Bob raked while Ruth sat and watched. I brought in a leaf for the babies to touch, but my mother said, "They're still too little, Pantao." The snow made the world quiet around us. We stopped seeing Bob and Ruth outside. The snowflakes fell on their driveway and glittered in the gray light. I made a ball of snow for my brothers, but it melted before they woke up from their nap. At night, I looked out our big window at Bob and Ruth's house, to see their lights shining across the dark street. Sometimes I saw the shape of a person looking back at me. I waved, but the shadow person never waved back. On a cold morning, cars came to our block, filling the street. Car doors slammed as men and women in thick jackets walked quickly to Bob and Ruth's house. My father said, "Ruth has died. Her family is coming to say goodbye." I felt sad for Ruth. My brothers just played with their toys above them. The cars kept coming and going, the next day and the next. I swayed back and forth on my toes by the big window. I tried to lift one of my brothers so the people could see how cute he was, but he cried, and my mother said, "You're still too little to carry him, Pantao." After the Hmong New Year, my baby brothers learned how to sit on their own, and we all sat looking out the window together. I clapped for them when a plane flew across the high skies. They laughed every time. The house across the street looked empty. The ginkgo trees reached for the sky with their thin fingers. When the snow started melting, I could not wait to return to the swing and the slide in the garden. My baby brothers crawled all over the floor, underneath the tables and chairs. They were like puppies, their tongues licking everything. I found the first worm of spring on the sidewalk and named her Annette. I wanted to bring her inside so my brothers could watch her wiggle, but my mother said, "I don't think so, Pantao." The world became green again, and finally we all went outside. Tai Tai planted green onions. I picked flowers from the lilac bushes so my brothers to smell. They opened their mouths and tried to eat them. My mother said, "Don't let them eat the flowers, Pantao." We took the babies outside again the next day after lunch. Bob's garage door opened, and we all watched as he pushed out his special bench. He sat down alone. I pulled on my mother's sleeve until she looked at me. I whispered an idea in her ear. My mother and I crossed the street and walked over to Bob. I let the sidewalk chalk bucket swing in my hands. I asked my mother to ask Bob if I could draw on his driveway. I said, if he doesn't like it, the rain will come and wash it away. Bob nodded and said, "Go ahead." My mother and Bob talked in low voices. I could hear Bob say, "Ruth, she was with me for 60 years. I started my picture with a teardrop. And then I made it splatter like sunshine. I drew lines leading away from the splatter sun in many directions. I drew a line that led to the garden. There I put a yellow ginkgo leaf. I drew a line that led to the grass. There I made the sparkling snow. I drew a line to the sidewalk. There I put a smiling worm named Annette. I drew an arrow to our house. There I added lilac flowers. And then I drew a line, the biggest line of all, towards the street. There I knew I drew the whole world. When I was done, I walked quietly to my mother and to Bob. They stopped talking. Bob shook my hand. "What did you draw for me?" he asked. I said in a whisper, "A map into the world, just in case you need it." Bob said, "I think I might." So that was the end of our book. So I do want to share that this is based on a real story. Here you can see this is the author, Kaukalia Yang. This is the editor. Her name's Carol Hines. I don't know how to say her last name. And this is Bob. They're sitting in the special chair outside of Bob's house. and this is pictures of their kids, of the author and the editor's kids on the chair, the bench, I mean. And the first time that Kaukalia Yang read this was at an event at the Children's Museum, and Bob was there, and people got to come and take pictures with Bob afterwards. So pretty cool. So let's do. I want to talk about the book, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts. So, since you're watching this in a video, it's really important that you send me an email, or if you see me in office hours, that you tell me kind of your answers to these questions. 'Cause I want to know what you think, and I want to make sure that you and we're on the same page. So, our first question is, what do you think this book is about? What do you think this book is about? Can you make any connections to this book? Is there anything that you do that the characters in the book do too? Who is Pantao's neighbor? What did Pantao do for her neighbor? And lastly, what do you think it means to be a neighbor? Has your answer changed at all from the greeting? Is there any new things you want to add to it? Let me know what you think. Okay, so quickly, I just want to talk about what is a complete sentence. So I read all you guys' writing that you guys did last week with our writing assignment. So now I want to make sure that we all understand how to write a complete sentence because your assignment today is to do a little bit of writing. So one thing that when we're writing in sentences that you need to do is you need to start it with a capital letter. That's required for making it a complete sentence. It needs to start with a capital letter and it needs to end in a period. Usually I'll end in a period, but if you're writing a question, use a question mark, obviously. And every once in a while, if you have something that you really want to emphasize or focus on, you can use an exclamation point. But most of the time, it'll be a period. And what really makes a sentence a complete sentence is making sure that it makes sense by itself. So just that one, when I say by itself, I mean just that one sentence, not next to, don't, like it might make sense with everything else you've written, but it has to make sense with by itself, just from capital letter to period. That part, that sentence, that's what a sentence is, that part needs to make sense. So I like to say there's a really good trick to test to make sure your sentence makes sense. So you can use the guess what test to test your sentence. So you can pretend someone says, guess what? And then read your sentence. So from capital letter to period. If that makes what you read makes sense, then you have a complete sentence. If it doesn't make sense, you need to add in some more words or details. So let's do an example. So let's pretend someone said, hey, Mrs. Sobey, guess what? And then I'll say my sentence, and I could say, you need to start each sentence with a capital letter. Okay? So the person would be like, yeah, okay. Right? I mean, it might be kind of random, but it makes sense, right? It's not confusing what I just said. But if someone said, hey, Mrs. Sobey, guess what? And I just said, end with a period, you'd be like, what? And what with a period? Right? Do you see how it doesn't make sense? You need more details. You don't know, like you said, those you need to add in some more words to explain what you're thinking. So that's a good way to test to make sure you are writing complete sentences that make sense. So today we're going to be doing an assignment. You're going to have to write 3 to 4 sentences, and they'll need to have all of these. They'll need to be capitalized with capital letter, period, and making sense. So for your assignment today, you need to write 3 to 4 complete sentences, like what we just talked about, making sure you have those capital letters and periods. And you're going to be writing about what does it mean to be a neighbor. You need to tell me how can people be good neighbors, and I want you to use at least one example from the book to explain your thinking. So you're going to be, this is what your worksheet right here looks like. You'll be completing this in Notability and then submitting it on Schoology. So I have some ideas that, some sentence ideas that you guys can use, but you certainly don't have to. So Blank is what it means to be a good neighbor. You can be a good neighbor by blank. A neighbor is blank, and Pantao was a good neighbor by blank. So these are just some ideas. You can use them if you want, but you don't need to. But you do need to do is write 3 to 4 complete sentences answering these questions. So I want you guys to know how you'll be graded on this assignment. So this assignment will be 4 points. So here you can see. So here you can see what the questions are that you need to write about. So to get a 4, that you need to write more than 4 sentences because, right, remember 4 is going above and beyond. Make sure every sentence is complete with capital letters and periods. You need to answer the questions and use multiple examples from the book. A 3 is you need to write those 3 to 4 sentences like the directions say. Every sentence is complete with capital letters and periods, and you include at least one example from the book. So this is what I want you guys to shoot for today, either a 3 or a 4, by making sure you do all the requirements. Okay, so now it's work time. So the worksheet today is in Schoology for you to put in Notability. When you open up in Notability, it'll look like this. So here you can just see the directions to write those 3 to 4 sentences. So what you need to write about. Here are those sentence ideas that I gave you. And then I want you to write your answer here in this box. And when you're done, make sure you turn it in. So that's all that we have for today. We have live class again tomorrow because we have live class every Tuesday, Wednesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday, the 2nd. So make sure that you are there so you don't have to keep watching these videos because it's much better to be there than watch these. Just saying. Okay, we'll see you guys tomorrow.